Well, days after India banned 59 Chinese apps for engaging in activities which are prejudicial to the sovereignty and integrity of the country, Beijing on Thursday urged New Delhi to immediately correct what it called discriminatory practices against Chinese companies. India on Monday banned 59 apps with Chinese links, including the hugely popular TikTok and UC browser, for engaging in activities which are prejudicial to sovereignty and integrity of India, defense of India, security of state and public order. Announcing its decision to ban 59 apps, the Information Technology Ministry said that the move will safeguard the interests of crores of Indian mobile and internet users. This decision is a targeted move to ensure safety and sovereignty of Indian cyberspace. The IT Ministry statement also said that it has received many complaints from various sources, including several reports about misuse of some mobile apps available on Android and iOS platforms for stealing and covertly transmitting users' data in an unauthorized manner to servers which have locations outside India. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the ban on data stealing Chinese apps. Joining me on the program today are Khushbu Jain, cyber law expert, Prawal Singh, Vice President Marketing, Zoho Corp, and Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Ambassador, let me begin the program with you first. Let's hear your initial reactions and thoughts really on the ban of the data stealing Chinese apps.
I think it's a very welcome move. I welcome it completely, because I think the reasons that have been given, number one, that it is for protecting the security and integrity of the country, protecting the territorial integrity of the country, the sovereignty of the country, and also to protect the data of millions and hundreds of millions of Indians who have been participating in this. So I think it is to be welcomed. Because it deals with the security of our people and of our country. I think it has many other ramifications also, because there is a lot of profit that has been going out as a result of these apps to China. I think in terms of the economic impact of banning these apps, that is also going to be significant. You know, there are some numbers that have been mentioned that it might be close to about $6 billion. Some people might say that it is not a very significant amount, but I think it is also an indication, it's also a message to China that it is not going to be business as usual as far as our relations with China are concerned, particularly after the confrontation on the 15th of June. I also feel that this is only the beginning. This is only a start. This is the first step. As I've said, it's not going to be business as usual. China has really thrown the gauntlet at India, and India has responded and will continue to respond in a step-by-step, in a calibrated approach. I think the other aspect also, Frank, that we really need to look at and we really need to focus on is that in addition to the security, this decision is going to provide a huge impetus and a fillip to our own tech companies, because when these big companies, big apps like TikTok, UC browser, Weibo, WeChat, etc., they are going to be out of play as far as the Indian market is concerned. I think this will provide an impetus to further refine the apps that we already have. There are a number of apps in the Indian market which can easily replace what is being taken away from here. But I think they need to be upgraded, they need to be further innovation, and I think that is what it is going to provide as far as the Indian app developers and the industry is concerned. So across the board, if you see, there might be some initial pain. I don't deny that, because after all, there are people, you know, for instance, TikTok, it is supposed to have more than 200 million followers in India, and many of them might have developed their own business models as far as several of these apps are concerned. There might be temporary pain, but I think in the interest of national security and in the interest of data privacy, which is the big thing going forward. I think this is a step that was long in coming, and I'm very happy it has been taken. As I said, this is the first step. I'm sure we can going forward, we can look at other steps like banning Huawei, banning ZTE, but maybe you'll come to that in the latter part of your program.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll talk about alternatives. We'll talk about how apps like TikTok and others can be replaced in just a bit. I'll go to Prawal for that. But before that, Kushbu Jain, how difficult or easy is it to really to implement this ban really as far as these apps are concerned? Do we expect these apps at some point in time to seek legal recourse? TikTok has said that it's not going to look at legal options for the time being, but what options do they have going forward?
When you talk about practical aspect, yes, I totally understand that, because of the VPN and because of, different modes of it, they can come back. But when you talk about legally, yes, one has to move to the court or to the ministry for the ban. And this is at the very nascent stage. What we're looking at a ban is just an interim order. The procedure goes as to, under Section 69 of your IT Act and also the 2009 rules. The MIT has a power to block certain websites, URLs, and mobile apps. Mobile apps has been almost at the first time now. But then when this happens, then the situation comes as to there has to be a request by a nodal officer of specific department that has to come to the meeting, and then there's a committee which is formed, and then they look into it that do they meet the condition which is being specifically mentioned there, as sir was also talking about, as to national security, integrity of the nation. If all those criteria is met, so it's a prelim stage where they are even asked that, okay, give your reply to that, and there are situations where they do not even do that. So this is at that nascent stage that one has to. But then if the order comes against them properly, then yes, you do have a recourse to go to the court and to challenge the order. But at the same time, I would say that the countries, the apps which we are talking about, the 59 apps which we are talking about, they all originate from China. And if you look at China, and you're not forgetting the censorship and surveillance which China is up to, and also looking at the Great Firewall which it has, and the Golden Shield. Looking at all of it, when a country like China, who has 24/7 censorship, whereas their own country is concerned, and in presence of such an opaqueness, whereas their laws are concerned, or all these apps which originate, or their parent company which originates from China, the kind of agreements they have or contract they have, an ambiguity, whereas how exactly whether the government there can intercept or have an access to entire data, such sensitive data, when we talk about these kind of apps, and the kind of number which we have, the user base, whereas India is concerned. Looking at all of it, there's a high possibility that whereas surveillance part is concerned, yes, there's an extreme high possibility, and for them to challenge, they should come clean on that part. This is not for the first time. US has, I think, a year back issued another circular talking about the vulnerabilities, or the TikTok vulnerabilities. The latest we can look into, the iOS. Apple iOS 14, which got into which started tracking that in case there is any copy, or the feature of clipboard. So when somebody copies anything, or anything gets copied, you get a notification that this thing is copied, and that was been happening, I think, in the back door, whereas TikTok was concerned. So it's not just the data which is uploaded over your website or your apps, but it's you're practically entire snooping is done over my phone, that as to what am I doing or what am I not doing. So looking at all, and with ambiguity, whereas their law is concerned, whereas they sharing their data with their government is concerned, I think China has to come clean on that, and especially China when they put ban on Twitter, and the latest has been the the channel Beyond, where Beyond was doing extensive coverage over COVID related thing, which we were not happy about. They banned entire Beyond. Beyond doesn't work in China. So looking at that, yes, I don't think so. They should be in a state to question without bringing transparency.
Okay, all right. Prawal, let me bring you into the picture now, and take forward a point that the ambassador was making initially. See, most of these apps, like he mentioned, are extremely popular. TikTok being one of the most popular ones among those that have been banned, and there have been several people within the country too who are quite upset about this particular ban as far as TikTok is concerned, because many people have made a living out of it. So do we have alternatives really as far as these apps are concerned? How easy or difficult is it to develop apps on the scale of TikTok, Weibo, WeChat, UC browser, etc.?
Thank you, Frank. So I look at the whole picture as three legs to it. One is, of course, people like you and me who would consume content on any of these platforms, including TikTok. B, people who create content on these platforms, the influencers or people who actually create content on these. And then the third are the app manufacturers, right? People who create or build those applications. In a way, all the three segments are impacted, but very differently. For example, I was looking at a few tweets today morning and yesterday evening from people who have between 2 and 5 million followers on a network like TikTok. Now, this gentleman was saying that switching to an alternative right now is not a good idea. I would rather start posting on Instagram or YouTube and wait for TikTok to come back because they're already talking to the government. So there is a hope. There is a hope that a following that they have built over the years will not go waste from a content creator perspective. From an app builder perspective, building these apps is not something that entrepreneurs in India have not done in the past or cannot do. I mean, there are a lot of apps that are seeing a lot of traction. Apps like Chingari or Oposo, they've been around. They're seeing a lot of traction right now. Talking about B2C apps in particular. So building that app from a technology standpoint is one thing, but getting that kind of adoption is the other. And that is going to be a challenge because for most of these people, I mean, the audience is global, right? So they're not just creating content for Indian audience, even though India happens to be the biggest, own the biggest share of consumption for most of these apps. So technology is one point, getting the adoption, getting that kind of followers, that's something that would need trust, and that comes only with time, not overnight. Lastly, from a consumer perspective, we talk about privacy, we talk about security, all of that. I believe if an application runs on the ad revenue model, where the only way they make money is through ads, privacy is often just a myth because you are somewhere compromising your data, in different ways, and you don't know how that data will be used. In this case, these apps were from China, and there were reasons to block them because there was a question of national security. But that is very different from privacy as a concept. Privacy is something as simple as you not having my consent to use my data. But in a platform that is driven by ads, customer is the product oftentimes. So that's what I feel about all the three stakeholders of this ecosystem right now.
Okay, all right. I'm going to come back to this issue of privacy and data mining. Khushbu, I'll take that up with you a little ahead in the program. But before that, Ambassador, it's not just India's concern. Many other countries have complained about this issue of China stealing data, really, from various countries. I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately is the Australian Prime Minister's revelation that he made a few weeks ago. The Americans, too, have been continuously talking about this issue. Your thoughts?
You're very right, Frank. And in fact, it's not only Australia, it's not only America. I think it's been around. Even in India, you would recall that TikTok itself was banned for a short while some time ago, but that was a short while. And then they said that we have taken care of the issues that were there. I think in terms of the nature, the quality of content that was being streamed over TikTok. So there have been these issues, and I guess we might have allowed them to go forward had we not come into the sort of situation that we are in as far as our bilateral relations with China are concerned, what they are doing in Eastern Ladakh and what they are doing along the line of control. Had what is happened on the 15th of June, had that not happened, I am not sure where we would have been at this particular moment. But I think there is this feeling that all these private companies, and I had mentioned briefly about Huawei, ZTE, TikTok, all these, whether it is Alibaba, Tencent, all of them in some way or the other are linked to the Communist Party of China. So whatever they are doing, whatever is happening, data is something, that we are talking about. It might be useful going forward, maybe in the immediate near future. There might not be all that much use that it might be put to the data. But whether we allow all this information to go to China, to be stored there and to use whenever it is required. Now, I think also if you look at, Frank, the order that has come out, and it's quite a detailed order, and it has given a lot of information in terms of where are the security issues, what are the complaints that have been received, not only by the Ministry of Information Technology, but by the other agencies who are dealing with all this on a day-to-day basis, that there is a risk to Indian security, to Indian sovereignty, to Indian territorial integrity. I think those who are domain experts and can look into it, I think there is a lot of groundwork, a lot of due diligence that has been done by the ministry, because I'm sure, as Khushbu was saying, there are possibilities down the road of companies taking this order to the courts. So I think the government also wishes to protect itself, and also when it goes to the court, it also wishes to give this, send out a very clear message that this is not an impulsive reaction. This is not happening just because of what is happening, although that, in my view, might have provided the trigger. But I think this is been going on for some time, and that is what this order has tried to demonstrate. It has been happening, and now we are taking a decision as far as this is concerned. So I think it stands on strong, solid ground for the time being. When the matter comes out in court, I think we'll have to see how the two sides are able to present the cases.
Absolutely. All right. So, Khushbu, data mining is something that has been resorted to for a while now. Individual businesses, in fact, have made a killing out of it, and we all know about it. But, it's a different ball game or a different picture completely when this is state-sponsored, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. If let's just compare, let's have two aspects. When we talk about a mobile app, what exactly there's a serious gap when it comes to the purpose part. So what exactly do they collect? Let's look into a mobile app can have an access to who you are, as to your biometrics, your fingerprints, that can have your retina, that can have your personally identifying information. What do you do? So who you are, what do you do, what you have, and what you know. So yeah, right from meaning your activity, travel, GPS locations, your behavior pattern, your movement patterns, including your identity, national identity number, passbook, bank account details. Everything is on the phone, and these apps have an access to it. Information as to your username, your access token numbers. So when you have all of it, and in the absence of if you look into the aspect that totalitarian state, whereas there is a thin line between the government and the business interest, and whereas this China is concerned, that's opaque over there. If we compare with let's say US giants like Apple, there is something called as when we compare US government and Apple, there is still decline, whereas when it comes to sharing of data on the ground of individual privacy, they do acknowledge the part of individual privacy over there. But on record, this is on record, whereas Chinese corporations are concerned, they are in compliance to data requests by their state, and that's very clear or opaque is what I say. So in such ambiguity which they have, or instances where it has been very clearly reported that Chinese government can compel their companies to give data whenever required for, or there is a proper framework as to sharing of the data. And also when we talk about mobile apps and privacy, there is still a serious gap when it comes to translation of requirements which we talk about, the principles of privacy which we talk about, the 9 principles. There is still a little gap as to requirement and translation of this requirement into the practical solutions. Looking at identifying purposes, limiting use, disclosure, and the way it has been shared. In absence of how it is shared and what backdoor entries are there, or when we talk about these companies, looking at WeChat or looking at TikTok also, their parent company, and then what their parent company exactly have contracts with the government over there. All these things is so this thing that the moment we talk about data mining, yes, it can be as I think the person before me was very clearly talking about that. That's their fodder. When we talk about the content of the user is what they live on, and the kind of valuation these companies have. One cannot forget that what is the earning model. So looking at the
Right.
earning model, I'm not saying that this should not be there or one has to curtail that, but the part that one has to abide with certain regulations, certain laws, and there has to be a transparency as to sharing of the data, or if you're mining also, at to what extent and with whom are you. So there has to be that openness. And I'll also add the part that we should have, one is national security, absolutely fine. The other part is individual privacy. We need to have data localization laws in place so that, there is a little better access or government has better hold and individual are a little more secured about whereas their data is concerned, because it's not just about apps, it's about websites also, and in the presence of VPN and all, other alternative modes, whereas internet is concerned, one can access the user's individual privacy is at the stake, which state is bound to take care of. So looking
Sure.
at that, there has to come some practical solution to it.
Okay, all right. So, Prabal, data, as we all know, is the new gold. So, how do we safeguard it? How do we, protect it? Is technology really the answer to it, or is there something else really?
In a world where each of us have at least one mobile phone in our pockets, we have come to terms with the fact that between the phone manufacturer, which the chances are is either Google or Apple right now for most of us, between them and between the service provider, the operator, the mobile operator, they pretty much know everything about us. What time we eat, where do we go, where do we check in, who do we text, and who do we text whom we should not. All of that, they are aware of it. And we've all come to terms with that. And there is no going back. I mean, if you really want to be completely, keep your life completely private, it means letting go of the mobile phone as the first thing. I don't see that happening. So the first thing is talking about privacy. A lot of data has already been shared, and we've come to terms with that. The thing is, what do these companies do with that data? And that is where intent comes into play, and that is where the business model comes into play. That is when the comfort comes into play as an end user or as a consumer. Like, if Apple has my data, what are they going to do with that? Are they going to use that to improve my experience with their product? I may be okay with that as long as they have my consent. But are they going to use that data to sell it to advertisers, to sell it to publishers, and show me ads that are more targeted? I may or may not be okay with that. Do they have my consent? So that is what I think it all comes down to. And think about it. Some of the smartest engineers in the world today are working on a problem, which is, how do they make us click on more ads? That's the internet age today. The smartest engineers in the world are working on making you click on more ads or displaying you more contextual ads. So that is the state of affairs. We may or may not be okay with that. That's a separate thing. But saying that I am on the internet, I have a mobile phone, and I have my life private, that is totally a myth.
Prabal, the truth hurts, and everyone is aware of this, but they just don't want to hear it. And you made us all hear it at the end of the day. And this is something that we have to come to terms with. We all know it, of course, like you said, but I guess the sooner we come to terms with it, the easier life becomes for all of us. But taking the discussion forward now, Ambassador, does this in any way have an impact on the larger picture, that is on the larger picture of Sino-India ties?
It definitely does. But before I respond to that, Frank, if you just permit me to make one comment on what Prabal has said. I think the world today is not all black nor all white. I think there are different shades of gray. And all of us have to come to terms with those shades of gray. As you said very rightly, we can't. We like connectivity. We like, if my experience gets better on my mobile phone, I welcome it. And many a times people say, okay, some people do have my data. I don't mind it because I have nothing to hide, and I would be happy to have a better experience. But it is the crux of the matter is what is the intent as far as we are going forward. And here, if you have a malevolent intent, as you see, if things are coming in from China, and we know that as far as the private sector is concerned and the Communist Party is concerned, it's a very, very amorphous, it's a very, very fuzzy sort of relationship between them. And if you know that what is the philosophy as far as China is concerned, then you will, of course, be very, very apprehensive as to what they are going to do and going forward. And when they are making so much advances, whether it is in robotics, AI, etc., then what is it that they are going to do? Now, coming to your question about the impact on the overall Sino-Indian relations, I definitely think that it does. Because, as I said, after 15th of June, in my view, it is not going to be business as usual. This is the first step that we have taken. I'm sure many more steps are going today. We see the Prime Minister is in Leh. He's not gone there for, sightseeing or whatever. There is a very serious security issue that the country is confronting today. And that comes from China. So it cannot be. We have to take a step-by-step approach. We have to take a calibrated approach. As I said, this is the first step. I'm sure Huawei will be next. ZTE will be next. APIs, we are talking about, we can manufacture APIs. It's not rocket science. We've done it earlier. Today, we are dependent 70-80% for APIs of antibiotics and other medicines. I'm sure we'll start developing them here. As far as electronic products are concerned, reaching out to Taiwan, reaching out to the other partners, I think this is definitely going to go forward, and it will have. We have been talking about the post-COVID world order. I think this is the Sino-Indian relations in the future are also going to be very, very different from what we have been used to from 1988 till the beginning of 2020.
Okay. All right. So, Khushbu, very quickly, what's the best way forward? I've got limited time, so very briefly.
So best way forward, yes. I'm not saying that we should go like China, or create a golden shield where the mechanism to put surveillance over or block hundreds and millions of websites or apps. I'm not saying go in that extreme, but yes, at the same time, one has to look into their national security or individual privacy. National security, we are going in the right step. This is one of the first one. So yes, there has to be more. There has to be a deeper, investigation, whereas all the apps are concerned. At the same time, when we talk about individual privacy, data privacy, data localization laws has to come in place. This is the right time that they should. It's high time that they should come in place. And at the same time, I would say that there has to be a specific guideline that should be provided, issuing recommendations as to what these mobile apps or websites has to have. Whereas all these principles are concerned. I'll shed little more light. Whereas privacy requirement in practice is what they had to be fulfilled while developing these apps.
Sure.
So these are the few things.
All right, and Prabhat, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on, is this a new opportunity now as far as the IT sector is concerned?
Absolutely, Frank. India has historically been known for IT services. Growing up, we've seen India, develop some of the best apps for companies outside of India. In the last 10 years, the whole tech startup boomed up in India. We've seen thousands of companies coming up, going up high in evaluations, building technology in India. This is just a trigger to bring up more startups, more technology-oriented companies to create something from scratch in India, not just for India, but for the world. And it's a huge opportunity for all of us to create something. And the longevity, I think, would depend on the intent. Like I said, if the intent is good, if we are okay to talk about what is the business model, what are we not hiding, how do we take care of privacy for our users, I think that would lead to trust, and that would make all the stakeholders for the ecosystem to thrive together.
Okay. All right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the app ban is just the beginning, one of many steps. It is part of a calibrated approach, is what the ambassador is suggesting. Prawal, of course, suggesting that privacy is a farce, your data is easily available, and just be careful and go with trusted apps is what the other panelists also are suggesting. It's an opportunity really as far as Indian IT sector is concerned to make in India.